Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Hey, Brian.
Good morning, Ani.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. And you?
I'm very good, thanks.
Good. Here we are, episode 67. And, recently we did a series of episodes on the top 10 questions that different communities or people asked. And we had some people say, well, what about us?
What about
we have some questions too. And so today we are talking about the top 10 questions from aspiring coaches inspired by their own somatic transformations.
This is, I love talking with these people because they're so passionate about somatic work. And usually the people who contact us have had somatic therapeutic work, Brian, not somatic coaching work. And so they have a lot of questions about the differences between somatic therapy and somatic coaching. Yep. But their passion really is like, this changed my life. I think my passion for this work came from this changed my life kind of incident that I had in college. I think similarly for you, when I was a junior in college, I was having some abnormal bleeding that the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. And I pulled a book off my bookshelf. It was The Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace. And my mom had given it to me actually when I went off to college. And, now that we have kids that are going off to college, I actually gave Charlotte, our daughter, a book. She went off and she gave me yeah, Mom, thanks a lot. Yeah. She put it on her bookshelf. And when I go visit her, I see that book on her bookshelf and I think to myself, that was my book that changed my life for the rest of my life. And I kind of wonder if the book I gave my daughter will do that. But anyway.
For her too, yeah.
So I didn't look at the book that my mom gave me until I was really having a struggle. And I knew that it had something to do with the chakra system, which I didn't understand much about, and energy medicine, which at that time I also didn't understand much about. I don't think I understood much about any of what was in the book, but I did know I was having a problem I couldn't explain. And when I recognized that there was an underlying issue that was causing bodily symptoms, and then it changed my symptoms. They went away. I thought, I've got to tell as many people as possible this. And that is often what happens with people who really want to do somatic work. Their lives were changed.
Lives were changed personally by it.
Exactly.
Yeah, most definitely. And so these questions that we're getting right now are from folks who are not necessarily already health and wellness professionals, somatic therapists, social workers, mental health professionals, wellness coaches. I may have said that already.
They're usually professionals in other categories. Right. They are people who, I'm just thinking about a few people who we've talked to in the past. We've talked to scientists, we've talked to entrepreneurs, I've talked to construction workers, talked to actually a bunch of executives.
Yep.
So anybody who's kind of another professional, but not in the helping profession right now.
Right now, yeah. So they had some type of somatic transformation and they're like, oh my God, this changed my life. I would love to do this in my life now. How do I get to do more of it? And oftentimes people then do career changes, as they go, because they're so inspired by this work.
And they feel really called to it. Yeah, they feel like it's a calling. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So those are the questions that we are, that we've received from you, based on being inspired by your own changes. Okay, so we ready to jump in?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the first questions is, so how do I turn my personal experience with somatic work into a career?
Gosh, yeah. Well, to turn it into a career is different than turning it into something that I do on the side sometimes. Because let's just be honest, some people do that.
Right.
I probably mentioned this before, but I remember reading a statistic at one point that 80% of the people who go to massage therapy school Do not go and become massage
Yeah,
therapist.
I would say that was true in the class that I graduated with
100% for me
80%
too.
attrition rate. Yeah.
Yep, or more
Yeah.
actually. People were astonished 5 years after massage school that I had a career,
Yeah.
because a lot of people were massaging friends and family kind of thing on the side. So I think one of the biggest things that goes into, actually turning your personal experience into a career is getting trained as a professional, because especially if you're going the coaching route, coaching is unregulated. You can hurt people if you try to do somatic stuff and you
Mhm.
don't have the background. You also don't have to be a licensed professional, but you really do have to have training. So that's one thing.
Most definitely. Yeah. The first basic thing I think about if think about I had a personal transformation, how do I turn that into a career? Is to ask myself, well, how do I want to go about doing that actually? Because there's lots of things you can do with somatic work,
Sure.
right? You can be a somatic educator.
Yep.
You could certainly do somatic coaching. You could do somatic therapy. So there's all kinds of different things that you could do. And you may be more inclined to do one of those things rather than another one of those things.
Yeah.
So I like to kind of even think about that.
Could also be a class teacher or
Yeah.
be a coach. So there are people who make their career and their living about teaching somatic based classes, and then there's people who see
Yeah.
private
Yeah.
clients.
So each one of those careers is a little bit different, and they all include somatic work.
Hmm.
So the question for you is, where do you feel like you're most called?
Yeah, and what do you want your business model to be? How do you want your business to support your life? What kind of lifestyle do you want?
Mhm.
Because each of those, like you said, is very different. So yeah, that's a really good way to start to conceptualize how you'll move forward and get trained in what to do the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, and a really good way to go about doing that too is to work with people. Like hire someone to do somatic coaching, to do some
Right.
coaching with them. Maybe explore and do some somatic therapy. Take part in some somatic education
Go to
classes.
some
Go
retreats
to
and
some retreat
workshops.
centers.
I
Kind
really
of play with it a little bit and feel like, oh God, that's what I want to be doing.
I really like that you brought this up because a lot of people actually don't do that
Mhm.
before they hop into training programs. Just like a lot of kids, we have kids going to college, so it's fresh on my mind all the time. Kids go to college and they never do an internship.
Yeah.
Like that was me. I never did an internship and I hopped into a career. So it's great to get that background.
Yep. Yeah. So think about how you fit, try out a bunch of things all around somatic work, and then figure out, hey, what is it that I'm really feeling called to do?
And then go get trained.
And get trained and then definitely get trained to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the fastest path to being
It is
able to
actually
help
the
people.
fastest path. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll be a person who wishes that you had done it 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so next question. Um, all right, well, actually the funny thing is the next
Did we
question
just
is kind
answer
of
it?
like, yeah.
Oh.
So what steps do I need to take to become a somatic practitioner that can help people?
So I think we just addressed it, but let's just nut down just a little bit more into this difference between somatic therapy and somatic coaching,
Okay.
which, by the way, we've got a bunch of podcasts about it.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but you can look at the titles and find them. They really are two very different tracks. And you can go you can become a therapist who does somatic work. You can go down the path of becoming like a body worker who does somatic work, or you could go the somatic coaching path. And those are vastly different professions, hands on and not hands on, and licensed professional and not licensed professional, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. And also consider, do you want to, after your training is done, do you want to be working for someone else's company, or
Yeah.
do you want to be working for your own company too? That has a lot to do with it also,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. And do you want to work strictly in like the wellness profession, or do you want to be working in kind of a larger professional? Because, I mean, let's be honest, if you go get a hands-on somatic body working kind of thing, you're in the health and wellness lane. You're
yeah,
working
mhm,
in a wellness center, you're working in your own office, and
right,
it's
yeah,
a very different kind of life than if you're doing something like somatic coaching. And if
okay.
I can just do a plug real quick for somatic coaching, because Brian and I, our history is in somatic therapeutics.
Hmm.
So for me, one of the things that I didn't understand, and coaching really wasn't a thing, 20 years ago that was super on the radar like it is now. But the difference in being a person who has therapeutic conversations all day and the person who's a professional who has coaching conversations all day, Brian, for me, lifestyle wise, is a huge
Mm,
difference. Because I found at the end of a therapeutic day, I was drained. I needed to recoup. I needed to,
yeah.
people used to ask me, how do you protect your energy all the time? I honestly like never feel like I have to protect my energy as a coach because I'm always having these kinds of aspirational kinds of conversations with people that for me give me so much energy.
Mhm.
So again, listen to past podcasts, but just super, super quick. The therapeutic conversation is usually, how do we get you back to baseline from where you're presenting right now? Whereas the coaching conversation is more about what do you want to achieve? What do you vision for yourself? Who do you want to be? I find those conversations to be so energizing.
Yeah, yeah. What's also occurring to me as you're talking, Ani, is that, and I think we've mentioned this, but not, I think overtly, is that somatic work also you can be delineated between kind of hands-on modalities and hands-off modalities, and also no hands modalities, which is kind of more the coaching and the using our words, using our asking questions, right? Using linguistics to kind of help people with somatics versus doing hands off kinds of things, which would be more like energy healing, Reiki, those kinds of things, and then hands-on, which would be more traditional body work and manipulative therapies and those types of things, right? They're all somatic practices.
Yep.
So again, how do you fit? What are you really interested in?
I got to say this one too. I've been talking to people recently, Brian, who have been talking about how some somatic communities that they've gotten involved in are very kind of yay, woo, let's move our bodies. And so you want to take a look at what your experience has been and what kind of impact you really want to make with people. Because if you, for example, I used to serve people in the journey dance community
Mm,
like years ago, helping them to grow their businesses. And if your experience is in journey dance and then you go and you get trained in a very different modality and you're like, wait a minute, but I wanted to help people dance. Like, I know that sounds kind of um, intuitive but not necessarily. Consider that because not every somatic program that you're going to go take is like a mix of the body mind. Some of the somatic programs you take are very body based. They're just body
right.
based,
Yeah.
like move your body, like Feldenkrais kind of thing.
Right.
And then some somatics are body mind integration based, more like our program where we're doing body, mind, spirit integration work. There's also this thing like that not every training program that you're going to take has a scientific background to it,
Yeah.
Brian.
Hmm.
And so, one of the things that the people who come and get certified with us really appreciate is when they go out and they talk to other professionals, they have that science base to lean back on because it does matter so much in our society.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's a really important part of it. I'm looking at the questions and I'm going to jump down a question. Not that anybody knows I'm jumping down, but it's going to help us with this part of the conversation. So
Okay.
one of the questions is, what are the essential skills I need to start helping others with somatic work? And I think part of what we've already talked about, let's kind of fold it into this question to kind of keep the ball rolling here. I think one of the first essential skill is to do your own work, right? And practice regularly, right? That's the first and most essential skill of being able to do somatic work with other people is to do your own work on a regular basis. So let's just say that's the first one. And we have, I've met people and worked with people who are very highly trained in somatic stuff, but they don't do a lot of their own work. And it shows up. And I can even say for myself, in full transparency, there's been periods of time where I've gotten really busy with the business and travel and that kind of stuff. And my own practice has kind of fallen off a bit. And it really affects my capacity to be with someone else, to hold that space, to understand what they're experiencing, empathy, compassion, all those things are really interrupted when I don't do my own practice regularly. So
Yeah.
that's like, I think the first and most important essential skill of being a somatic practitioner, therapist, coach, whatever, somatic fill in the blank after.
Yeah, one of the ways that shows up for people when they're not really sincerely doing their own work is they start to have external circumstances that are bothersome or frustrating. Like all of a sudden there's family drama, or my clients are, just like not meeting their goals, or there's like this weird external stuff that a
Hmm.
lot of times we think what's going on out there, that once we course correct on the inside clears up the external, fluff.
Yeah. So
So
doing your own work is like the most primary thing. And I know that sounds really basic, fundamental, and but it's really important. Got to do that. Don't jump over that
especially,
part,
I mean, with anything, but especially with somatic work, I
especially
think.
with somatic work. Okay, so the next part of that question is, what are the essential skills? Well, as far as like what we do here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, we kind of teach in a foundation up kind of a way. And the very first set of essential skills that we teach somebody are somatic practices. And I really think no matter what somatic work you're doing, whatever lane you're in that we've already kind of talked about a little bit, like somatic practices, doing your own somatic practices regularly, and also being trained in how to lead other people through somatic practices is a fundamental skill. So, what do those somatic practices look like? Well, there are things like um, familiar things like meditation and breath work, breath practices, let's say. Because I think, breath work and breath practices, there's a little different ways that that is received in the let's say the marketplace, right? Breath work, a lot of people think about that as being like, I'm going to work the breath, like breath of fire. I'm really going to activate the system. And I'm not always like thinking that those are the best things to do all the time for
It
people.
does have a very yang
Right.
kind of
Where breath
idea.
practices are kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, so I could go different ways with breath practices and do things. So we're going to talk about breath practices. So breath practices, meditation, mindful movement practices, self-massage practices. Those are all somatic practices that are really foundational to anything that you're doing with people in the somatic realm. So I think like essential skills, I think those are the essential skills.
And some people stop there and they're somatic
Yeah,
practitioners,
exactly.
and that's great. And some people want to go on and do more.
Do more specific work, right?
Exactly. But having that foundation is essential.
Right. Yeah. So what are the next essential skills to be do somatics to help with people? I think some of the skills are really around knowing how to ask the right questions, and that's where we kind of start coming into coaching. So we have our somatic practices where we're kind of leading, holding space, and in some ways, I think leading is maybe the best word.
I think it is
Right,
too,
you're
to be
really
really
leading
honest
people in
with you.
practices, but you're leading and you're kind of suggesting to other people that they might do some things.
Yeah.
We're
You're like a
coach
teacher.
Right, we're coaching, we're kind of turning that around a little bit. We're asking questions that are specific to someone's somatic internal processing systems that then the person themselves starts to come up with the answers
Right.
around those things. So that's another, I think, essential skill.
Yeah, well, the coaching is actually a partnership with the client, whereas you're as a somatic practitioner, you're not necessarily in partnership like that, you're leading. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Yep. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Because it starts to just open up a whole new world, an interesting kind of skill set, but also potential issues that you need to know how to handle when you start asking questions. And then I'm going to say that I've actually had a number of somatic therapeutic sessions myself where the person wasn't trained in asking questions, and they're asking me questions because I know how to ask really good questions that weren't helpful,
Mhm.
so that's a really good one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, those essential skills too are going to break down into whatever avenue you decide to go into,
Right.
right? Go back to the very first question we had of like, how can I turn this into a career? You have to just kind of decide which way you're going to go.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. I guess as we're talking about this, like I've got a little summary already kind of coming into my head for folks. So you've had an experience on your own, somatic transformational experience. You want to do that work in the world with other people. That's awesome. So, step one, keep doing your own work for sure. Step two, decide which lane you're going to go in. Work with other people, do some practices, like train with other, just decide which way you're going to go. And then learn that skill, right? You have to really learn a marketable skill, a marketable set of skills or techniques or methods, whatever it is, in order to then turn that into either being hired by a company
Right.
or to start your own business.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the block. Do your own work, decide which way you're going to go, learn that marketable certified skill, and then take it into the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm kind of like
Yeah.
that summary is kind of coming to me right now as we're thinking about
Yeah,
this.
that sounds good.
But partly, what are the essential skills? They're kind of going to be specific to whatever lane you decide to go in,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because some people are going to need business skills, for example, and some people aren't,
Right. Yeah.
depending on how they go.
Yeah. And of course, just to highlight really quick, the lanes that we train people in here, people who do not necessarily already have a wellness background or anything like that, people who have had an accountant who has had a somatic transformational experience and says, I am ready to shift out of accounting or add something else. What can I do? Well, if you come work with us, you're going to learn very first somatic practices. Trauma sensitive somatic practices are the first thing that you're going to learn because we know that that is one of the most effective things to learn first to turn around and make marketable very, very quickly to be able to start helping people and generating some revenue. That's the first thing you're going to learn with us. And then, of course, here we are at the Somatic Coaching Academy. So we're really heavy into the somatic coaching lane.
Right.
So that's the lane that we take people in.
Right. So then from there, you learn how to create somatic transformations. And from there, actually, how to be a somatic coaching professional. You said trauma sensitive. Are there any questions about trauma sensitivity? Because I think that's,
Yes, there are right here. So what does it mean to be trauma sensitive in somatic coaching?
I just think that's such an important conversation that is honestly relatively new in the marketplace, I think, on a broad scale, because as soon as you start working with somebody's body or emotions, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
you could open up Pandora's box.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you don't already have some skills or backgrounds in what it means to be able to be what we call trauma aware, trauma informed, trauma sensitive, trauma specific, we have a podcast called The Four Levels of Trauma Awareness, not awareness,
Practice.
trauma practices. I don't know. Look through the podcast for the four levels of trauma practice, I think is what
I
they
think
are.
that's what it is.
And we go in very detailed what the each level kind of means. So trauma sensitive is the level where we are learning how to work specifically with people's nervous systems in a way that we are enhancing stability and regulation in their nervous system. So that's what it means to be trauma sensitive in coaching.
And you can kind of handle things that come up, whereas
Yep.
before being trauma sensitive, if stuff comes up, you really aren't trained to be able to handle those things.
Right. Yeah.
And we have a great trauma awareness training. You can get a trauma aware practitioner badge with the Unlocking Human Potential program. It's on demand, and you can, do that
Yep.
anytime.
Start anytime. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, what does a typical session look like in somatic coaching?
Well, I think a little contrast is helpful with this one because a typical session for a somatic body worker doesn't have talking associated with
Yeah.
it because the body worker is doing something to somebody's body. So that's that session. And then a somatic therapeutic session is going to be a little bit different than the somatic coaching session because in a somatic therapeutic session, well, sometimes those are combined with body working too, by the way.
Sure.
Sometimes they're
Yep.
not,
Hmm.
sometimes they are. So let's say it's not. That session is going to look like, first of all, talking. And the session's usually set up more like a therapy session would be, where you come in and the client says what they want to work on that day, and you go in and you might talk about your past things that have happened, past memories, and then you process whatever it is that's going on, both through talk and maybe through some movement and breath and self massage and things like that. And then it's time to end, and off we go. With a coaching session, it's actually set up in a very specific way so that we were just training on this the other day in our level 3 program, so that our coaches help a person to get where they want to go. And that's in their life, to be
Hmm.
the person they want to be, have the things they want to have, do the things that they want to do. And that's a real distinct difference between the somatic therapeutic and the somatic coaching session. Is the coaching session is set up in a specific way to help somebody grow and get more in their life, aspirational quality. And then some of the stuff in the middle honestly looks similar.
Yeah, yeah. Could be some somatic practices in there. Yeah,
Totally,
nervous system
totally.
regulation work, those
Yeah.
sorts of things.
But the end looks a lot different
Mm.
because at the end of a somatic therapeutic session, it's like, okay, we're done. And when are you going to see, me again, kind of thing. But at the end of a coaching session, we're talking about evoking awareness around what did you learn about yourself today? And we're talking about what action steps are you going to take following the session? Where are you going to go with where we went today? what accountability do you need or want, and what does that
Mhm.
look like for you? And so that coaching container is a vastly different experience than a somatic therapeutic container.
Yeah.
So that's what a somatic coaching session would look like.
Yeah. Yeah. Great description of that. Okay, another question. How can I be sure I'm ready to coach others safely and effectively?
I'm really interested to hear what you have to say
Yeah,
about this.
so my answer to this is to number one, get trained,
Yeah.
right? So number one, get trained and make sure you're trained in trauma sensitive methodologies when you're doing somatic coaching. Because the question is about coaching, so I'm answering specifically to
Yeah,
this
and
question, right?
safety too, right? Like, how do I know I'm ready to have a safe session?
Yeah. So get trained, number one. Make sure it's trauma sensitive training.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are working with the program you're working with, where you get instructor feedback on what you're doing. You're doing plenty of peer sessions with your cohort peers you're working through, so that instructors, mentors have their eyes on you, giving you feedback right along the way. How can you be sure that do you have a dialogue going with your instructors and your mentors? Is there a way to get a hold of them directly so that you can make sure you're getting your questions answered? What are the competencies in the program?
Yeah.
How are you checked out on those things? Are you
Yeah.
clear about that? Does your instructor clearly say, "Great, okay, so this is what we like. That's what's happening here. This is really looking good. These are some areas for growth." Then your instructor kind of giving you parameters on this is what I think you're ready to start doing. This is what I'd kind of get a little more work on. So a lot of that, how do you know? It's you really have to trust and lean into your instructor team to not like always give you the green light, but to really like reflect back to you that you're ready to start doing these things in a safe way.
I'd like to think that upon graduation, you're going to know you're ready.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mark of a really great program too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of
You know you're
you'll
ready.
know you're ready.
You know you're ready. It's
Exactly.
graduation, and of course I'm ready.
Yeah. So actually, so there's another question kind of that feeds into that.
Uh-huh.
It's how can I build my confidence working with
I
clients?
think you just spoke to a lot of that. I mean, the peer shares that we see in our program are a huge confidence builder. And by the time we get to the place where we're testing people out on their competencies, they just have a lot of
Yeah, more
confidence.
confidence. And I think about confidence, and of course, here we are having conversation with you, listener, who has had your own somatic transformation and is wondering how you can turn your personal experience into a career. Right? Those are the questions we're asking. And so now, if you're asking about how can you build your confidence working with clients, like that's kind of a looking forward kind of thing because you're not working with clients right now yet because you haven't been trained yet to do that. So let's just talk about confidence for a second. So how do we build confidence anyway? Well, confidence is really built when you have had enough repetitions with doing something that you've had enough um, feedback on that you're accurate with the task or strategy. So think about driving a car. When you first started driving a car, the first time you got behind the wheel, my guess is you probably weren't too confident. And if you were too confident, you were probably dangerous, right? Sort of thing. So
That's similar here, isn't it?
so the thing is, so you have to kind
Yeah.
of, if it's the first time you're doing something and you're really confident, then it might be that you're not
Maybe you should get some coaching.
accurately kind of assessing like where you are with things. Too much confidence can be a little dangerous. So let's assume that the first time you drove a car, you weren't very confident. And then after your first year of driving, where you drove through some snowstorms and some rainstorms,
Yeah,
and
because some of those bumpy roads actually do really build your
yeah,
confidence,
and
right?
sometimes you fall into a ditch and you've
Yeah,
got to get pulled out of the ditch. And then you're
yeah,
like, now I know not to get that close to the ditch again.
yeah.
Like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Actually,
you heard like somebody did
yeah,
that
somebody did
once.
that. But that's like, I've been in ditches too. So the thing is, it's really about that's how you build confidence. You build confidence by practicing, by practicing, and by cataloging evidence that you were successful with your learning. Not necessarily always successful with the
Like the outcome.
exact strategy, but that you keep learning
Mm,
things from it. And that will inherently develop confidence such that then you end up in a session and someone asks you a question or you ask them a question and you're totally in the flow. There's no doubt. There's no self-doubt around you being a part of it. Now, I will also say this too. One thing that we really, one difference between being a person who's had a somatic transformation and not been trained versus someone who has been trained is oftentimes when we're working in the world of somatics, which is very murky, oftentimes because we're dealing with sensations, which are very murky. We're dealing with emotions, which are very murky. If you have not been trained to navigate through that territory with a specific process, what'll happen is you'll end up in all kinds of potholes and rabbit holes and backwoods and
And
bogs and
sometimes
marshes and
they're
scary
scary.
places,
Yeah,
right? So
they
if
can
you're,
be scary.
yeah, you're
And,
guiding someone through those places and you find yourself together lost in the woods, boy, that is a great disservice and dangerous for you and your client.
and it's moments like that that aren't like getting in your car in a ditch and getting pulled out and going, whoa, like I know not to go in that ditch. Like it's like maybe I shouldn't be doing this with my life kinds of
Right.
conversations you have with yourself, you know? Because it can get big.
Yeah. Yeah. And so basically, one of the things we really talk about a lot, a lot in our training program is to trust the process. The process works. When you work the process works.
And I've noticed with our students is they don't have the big scary dark woods kinds of moments with their clients, and I think that's because they are trained and they can handle it, and because of who they are and the practices
Mhm.
that they do, they don't even attract that kind of thing, but it's more the people who haven't been trained and aren't doing their own internal work to really like do their own pattern deconstruction and things like that those kinds of things will come up. I mean, I remember for me, I remember the session. I had a session where there was a big scary thing that happened, and I did have the training to lean back on it, but really one of the wake up calls for me is I was not being in full integrity with my own practice at that time, and I really had to get my act together with doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just another little tip there on building confidence is work with a process. Like don't rely on your intuition to get you through a session because that's dangerous and that will create avenues and places of self-doubt where when you lean into a process, then you can become confident using the process. And then no matter where you are during the session, you always ask yourself, where am I in the process?
I'm glad you brought up the intuition word because intuition is something that comes up a lot in terms of actually, even in the coaching world, as like aspirational, you should really use your intuition. And we want to keep our eyes on that as somatic practitioners,
Yeah, for
actually.
sure, for sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think intuition is a great skill to, or a great, I don't even say it's a skill, a great
It's
something
like a
to
quality
bring, a
almost.
quality or characters to bring once you've dialed in the process. But you don't
Absolutely.
want to lead with intuition with somatic work because
100%.
your subconscious pathways will be leading you, and all of a sudden your subconscious is leading your client's subconscious, and that is not a great place to be,
No,
right?
it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Whole other podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. So, what support is available as I make the transition into coaching?
Well, I think we have to talk about that from the Somatic Coaching
Yeah, from
Academy
our
kind
program,
of
obviously, because we don't
perspective.
know what
I
other
don't, yeah, I
program
don't know.
support someone's
But
going to have.
I mean, for us, at least right now and in the foreseeable future, any of our grads continue to have access to their program faculty indefinitely in the virtual communities that we hold, but also to their peers in their not just the
Mhm.
cohorts that they went through, but the greater graduate community. And so I would say, like, you really must be a part of a collegiate group of people
Yeah.
who's actually working and not just doing work on themselves, but working with people
Yeah.
to be able to talk about the things that come up.
Yeah, and in our community, if you're a graduate within our community, then we do monthly office hours for the whole community come and learn. Like, we do office hours and all kinds of
All
things to
kinds
help
of
people
things.
build their
Yeah,
practices and their
business
skills.
building and skill building
Yep,
and
skill
keeping
building.
people up on market changes too, because the market changes right now within the somatic world are actually pretty profound.
Yeah,
Coaching world too.
yeah, we do skill shares.
Yep.
If you're a part of our program, you get open coaching as a part of your program. So you're getting a lot of support to kind of help you become the absolute best coach that you can be.
Yeah, I would say that when you look at certification trainings, you want to make sure you're not just getting dropped off at the end.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you have ongoing support forever as a part of a really well-held community.
Yeah, and I've gotten training before where I've gotten dropped off and it's been fine, but not with this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
not with this. Yeah. Okay. So, last question. What career paths are open to me as a certified somatic coach? How can I attract clients as a new somatic coach?
Okay, so you know, the first part of that question about career paths, we kind of talked about a little bit.
Yep.
Like you can go be an employee, either in the somatic therapeutic or the somatic coaching or the somatic body working
Yep.
lanes, any one of those, or you can work for yourself. You don't always have to work for yourself. And I think that's a really big
Mhm.
consideration because the next question about how do I attract clients, if you're looking to gain skills as a somatic coach, then go work for yourself. You're actually looking at learning two things.
Mhm.
How do I become a somatic coach? How do I become a business owner? If you haven't worked for yourself before,
Yeah.
and if you haven't worked for yourself, like if you've worked for yourself, but you've sold products, say, but now you're working with people, that's also a totally different business. And it's not a problem. It's just a mindset shift. And you got to know that. So you're going to have a mindset shift into becoming a somatic practitioner, but then you're also going to have a mindset shift in becoming a solopreneur.
Yeah.
And those are two different mindsets that
Yep.
you will need to transform yourself into and adopt. And one of the easiest ways actually to adopt a new mindset is to do somatic work. So throughout the course of your program, you can be working on shifting your mindset to become the person that you want to be. But
Yep.
you really do need to have a business mindset, adopt a business mindset.
Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. If you're starting your own business,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And just a quick aside on that. Did you have something to
No,
say?
go ahead.
A quick aside on this. How do I attract clients? In our program, we primarily teach you the sales skills to be able to do that because you can go off and get yourself involved in the crazy expensive, rabbit hole driven marketing stuff that a lot of programs will teach
Online
you.
marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so even if you go and you get a certification that doesn't have any business building involved in it, which ours does, then you're left to your own devices. And what a lot of people do is they start creating online businesses and marketing funnels and social media mumbo jumbo that really doesn't get you new clients. So we teach you how to get new clients. And the
Yep.
way that we do that is through sales skills, conscious, loving, intentional conversations with
Yeah, yeah,
people.
win, 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 win,
Yeah.
win, win, win scenarios for you, your clients, and everyone involved
Yeah.
around that.
Which is so possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just in summary again, I know I said this a little bit ago, but I feel compelled to come back and just kind of wrap with this. If you've had a somatic transformation of your own, you want to start doing this work in the world, the first step is to keep doing your own work for sure. Like that's really important. Next step is to sample other practitioners' ways of doing things. Sample somatic practices, go to retreat centers, take some classes, hire a somatic coach for a while, do some somatic therapeutics, try as many different disciplines as you can experience to say, hey, what one really feels right for me? Once you decide what one feels right for you, sign up, find a program. We've actually written a really great article for one of our partners, Life Coach Magazine, on how to choose a somatic coaching program.
Oh, yeah. The
So,
ultimate guide. That's
yeah,
actually in our library.
yeah, so you check that out too. If you're thinking about a somatic coaching program, you're like, well, which one do I choose? We wrote an entire guide for that of how to check boxes to go through and ask about, hey, does the program offer this, this, and this?
Yeah.
Is it a match for me? So definitely check that out. Choose a program, get trained in that program, keep practicing those skills, and then learn how to bring it into the marketplace in a really holistic and heart-centered way.
And it's worth it. It's such a great career.
Yeah.
It's such a life-giving, wonderful career. And if you do feel called to it, follow that calling. We hope that we've helped to answer a lot of your questions. And if you still have more questions, our team loves to talk to you. So reach out, info@somaticcoachingacademy.com, and we'll set up a time to chat.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.